Sometimes love teaches us the deepest lessons when our hearts are the most fragile. My love, there's a question that has been quietly living inside my soul for a long time. A question I never had the courage to ask until now. Why did you leave when I needed you the most? There was a moment in my life when the world felt heavy, when every dream seemed distant, and every night felt a little colder. In that moment, I didn't need perfection. I didn't need promises. I just needed you standing beside me. Because love, to me, was never about the easy days. It was about holding each other when life became difficult, when the storms came, when everything else was falling apart. But when my heart was searching for your hand, it found only silence. And even today, I still wonder, was my love not enough? Or did my pain become too heavy for you to carry? Tonight, I'm not speaking with anger. I'm speaking with a heart that still remembers every smile, every promise, every moment we believed our love could survive anything. Because real love doesn't disappear with goodbye. It stays, asking questions that only the heart can hear. And the one question that still echoes inside me is this: my love, why did you leave when I needed you the most? My love, there are moments in life when the world becomes so quiet that you can hear your own heart asking questions you never thought you would ask. Questions that echo in the silence of the night. Questions that follow you through crowded streets. Questions that sit beside you when no one else does. And the one question that has lived inside me for so long is simple, yet so heavy. My love, why did you leave when I needed you most? You see, love was never just a word to me. It was never just a beautiful feeling that comes and goes like the wind. Love to me was always a promise, a quiet promise that no matter how difficult life becomes, no matter how dark the days get, two hearts would stand together. I believed in that promise with everything I had. I believed that when life pushed me to the edge, your hand would be there to pull me back. I believed that when the nights felt longer than they should, your voice would be the light guiding me through the darkness. I believed that when the world turned cold, your presence would be the warmth I could return to. But there came a time when life tested me in ways I never expected. There was a season in my life when everything felt like it was falling apart, piece by piece. Dreams that once felt so close suddenly seemed far away. The road ahead looked uncertain, and every step felt heavier than the one before it. Those were the days when I needed love the most. Not the perfect kind of love that only shows up during happy moments. Not the kind that only exists when life is easy and the sun is shining. I needed the kind of love that stays when the storm arrives. I needed the kind of love that sits beside you when you have nothing left to give, when your heart is tired, when your spirit feels weak. I needed you. There were nights when the silence of my room felt louder than any noise in the world. Nights when I would sit alone with memories playing in my mind like an old film that refused to stop. I remembered the way you used to look at me, like I was someone who mattered, like I was someone worth believing in. I remembered the laughter we shared, the dreams we built together, the promises we whispered when we believed the future was ours. Those memories felt warm, but they also carried a quiet pain, because when the moment came that I needed your presence more than anything, you were gone. And I kept asking myself, what changed? Was it the weight of my struggles that pushed you away? Was it the silence of my pain that made you feel distant? Or was it simply that love sometimes fades in ways we don't understand? I never wanted to believe that love could disappear when life becomes difficult. I always believed that love grows stronger when two people face the storm together. But when I looked around during those difficult days, the place where you once stood beside me felt empty. And that emptiness taught me something about the human heart. You see, when someone you love leaves during your darkest moment, it creates a silence that no words can easily fill. It's not just the absence of a person, it's the absence of the comfort you believed would always be there. I would walk through my days pretending to be strong, smiling at people, speaking like everything was normal, moving through the world as if nothing inside me had changed. But deep down, there was a quiet ache that followed me everywhere, because when love becomes part of your soul, losing that presence feels like losing a piece of yourself. There were moments when I wanted to reach out to you, moments when I wanted to say, I'm not okay, I need you here, but something inside me stopped those words before they could leave my heart. Maybe it was pride, maybe it was fear, or maybe it was the quiet realization that if someone truly wants to stay, they don't need to be asked, they simply stay. And that realization was one of the hardest lessons love has ever taught me. I began to understand that love is not only measured by the beautiful moments we share. When life is easy, love reveals its true nature when life becomes complicated, when the road gets rough, when the nights become heavy, when someone you care about is standing in the middle of a storm. That is when love shows its strength. That is when love decides whether it will remain or quietly walk away. I remember sitting alone one evening as the sun disappeared behind the horizon. The sky was painted with colors that looked almost unreal, shades of orange and purple stretching across the quiet evening. It should have been a beautiful moment, but all I could think about was how different that moment felt without you beside me. Because once upon a time, we used to watch sunsets together. We used to talk about the future as if it were something waiting just around the corner. We used to believe that no matter what life brought our way, we would face it side by side. And maybe that is why your absence felt so confusing, because the love we shared never seemed fragile. It felt strong, steady, real. At least that's what I believed. I replayed so many memories in my mind, trying to understand where things changed. Was there a moment when the distance between us quietly began to grow? Was there something in my eyes that showed you I was struggling, and instead of bringing us closer, it pushed you away? Sometimes the mind searches endlessly for answers that the heart may never fully receive. But the question still remains. My love, why did you leave when I needed you most? Was it because my life no longer looked like the dream we once imagined? Was it because my struggles became too real, too heavy, too complicated? Or was it because love sometimes asks people to carry a weight they never expected, and not everyone feels strong enough to hold it? You know, I used to think that strength meant never showing pain. I used to believe that if I kept my struggles hidden, if I carried my burdens quietly, everything would somehow work itself out. But love has a way of revealing our most vulnerable moments. And during those moments, we discover who is truly willing to stand beside us. There were nights when I stared at the ceiling, listening to the quiet rhythm of my own breathing, wondering how two people who once felt so close, old, suddenly feel so far apart. It was an anger that filled my heart. It was confusion. Because when you truly love someone, you don't expect them to disappear during the moment you need them most. You expect them to sit beside you in the silence. You expect them to say, I'm here, we'll figure this out together. You expect them to remind you that even when life becomes difficult, you're not alone. And maybe that's what hurt the most. Not the goodbye itself, but the timing of it. Because the moment you walked away was the moment I needed your presence the most. I didn't need solutions. I didn't need perfect words. I didn't need someone to fix every problem in my life. I just needed someone who believed that my struggles were worth facing together. Someone who understood that love is not about standing beside each other when everything is perfect. Love is about choosing each other when life becomes messy, uncertain, unpredictable. There is a certain kind of loneliness that only appears when someone you love is no longer there during the moments that matter most. It's a loneliness that doesn't shout. It whispers. It whispers in quiet rooms and empty streets, in the spaces between memories. It reminds you of what once existed and what no longer does. And yet, even in that loneliness, my heart never learned how to hate you, because love, real love, doesn't easily turn into bitterness. It turns into questions. It turns into long moments of silence, where you simply sit with your thoughts, trying to understand the journey your heart has taken. Sometimes I wonder if you ever think about those days too, if you ever remember the promises we once made, If you ever look back and ask yourself the same question I ask every night, what happened to the love that once felt unbreakable? Maybe the truth is that life changes people in ways we cannot always predict. Maybe the dreams we once shared slowly began to move in different directions. Maybe the weight of reality became heavier than the beauty of our hopes. Or maybe love simply revealed that we were standing on different paths all along. But even with all those possibilities, the question inside my heart still remains the same. Why did you leave when I needed you most? Because love to me was never about perfection. It was about presence. It was about staying when things become difficult. It was about holding someone's hand when the world around them begins to shake. It was about choosing each other again and again, even during the moments when everything feels uncertain. And when that choice disappears, the heart is left searching for meaning in the silence. There were days when I felt like the world kept moving forward while I stood still, trying to understand something that no longer had clear answers. People around me continued living their lives, laughing, planning their futures, building new memories, and I learned to do the same. But somewhere deep inside, a quiet part of my heart continued asking the same gentle question, not with anger, not with blame, just with the simple honesty of someone who once believed that love could survive anything. My love, why did you leave when I needed you most? My love, there is something strange about memories. They do not disappear when a person leaves. In fact, they become louder. They sit quietly in the corners of your mind and return when the world becomes silent. A song, a place, a certain time of the evening, and suddenly everything comes back. The laughter, the long conversations, the way we believed the future was ours to build. Sometimes I walk past places where we once stood together, and for a moment it feels like time folds back on itself. I can almost hear your voice again. I can almost see the way you looked at me when everything between us felt simple and real. And that's the strange thing about love. It leaves traces everywhere, not just in photographs or messages or shared moments, but inside the small details of everyday life. The way the night feels quieter than it used to. The way certain words carry a different weight now. The way your heart remembers someone, even when your life has learned to continue without them. When you left, the world didn't stop. The sun still rose every morning. People still hurried through the streets. Life continued with the same rhythm it always had. But inside me, something changed. Because when someone you love walks away during the moment you need them most, it doesn't just break your heart for a day or a week. It changes the way you understand love itself. I used to believe love meant certainty. I used to believe that when two people cared deeply about each other, nothing could truly separate them. That belief felt natural to me. It felt almost unshakable. Love was supposed to be the place you returned to when life became difficult. But when you disappeared during the hardest chapter of my life, I began to understand something painful and honest about the human heart. Not everyone stays. Not everyone knows how to stand in the middle of someone else's storm. And sometimes the person you thought would hold your hand through the darkest night becomes the silence you face alone. For a long time, I kept wondering if I had done something wrong. If there was a moment when I failed you in ways I didn't realize. Maybe I didn't show you enough strength. Maybe I let my struggles become too visible. Maybe my pain was something you didn't know how to face. When someone you love leaves, the mind becomes a place full of questions. You replay conversations. You revisit memories. You examine every small moment, as if somewhere inside those details you will finally discover the answer. But the truth is, love rarely leaves us with perfect explanations. Sometimes it simply leaves us with silence. And in that silence, we begin learning how to understand ourselves. There were nights when the loneliness felt heavy enough to fill the entire room. Nights when I wished you were there just to sit beside me, even if we didn't say anything at all. Because sometimes love isn't about words. Sometimes it's about presence. Just knowing someone is there. Just knowing someone hasn't walked away. I didn't need you to solve my problems. I didn't expect you to carry the weight of my entire world, but I believed that love meant we would face life together, even when life became difficult. Maybe that belief was naive. Maybe I believed in a version of love that only exists in the quiet dreams of hopeful hearts. But it was real to me. Every promise we shared felt real. Every plan we made about the future felt real. And the way you once held my hand made me believe that no matter what storms arrived, we would face them side by side. That's why your absence felt so confusing. It wasn't just the loss of a person, it was the loss of the certainty I once felt about love. After you left, I began to notice things about life that I had never paid attention to before. I noticed how many people walk through the world carrying silent pain. I noticed how many smiles hide quiet struggles. I noticed that strength often appears in people who were never given the choice to be weak. Because when you lose someone during your most vulnerable moment, you either collapse under the weight of that pain, or you slowly learn how to stand again on your own. The first days were the hardest. Everything reminded me of you. Your absence felt like an empty chair at the table of my life. Something that everyone else might ignore, but something my heart could never forget. And yet, time has a strange way of teaching patience. Days slowly turn into weeks. Weeks turn into months. And little by little, the heart begins to breathe again. Not because the love disappears, but because the soul learns how to carry it differently. I stopped asking myself why you left every single day. Not because the question disappeared, but because I began understanding that some answers will never arrive. Sometimes people leave not because the love was fake, but because they were not ready to face the reality that came with it. Sometimes people walk away because staying requires courage they do not yet possess. Sometimes love meets fear, and fear wins. And maybe that's what happened between us. Maybe when life became difficult, you looked at the storm around me and felt something inside you whisper that leaving would be easier than staying. If that's the truth, I cannot hate you for it, because every human heart carries its own battles. Every person has limits they may never fully explain. But there is one thing I have learned since the day you walked away. Real love is not only about how people hold your hand during beautiful moments. Real love reveals itself during the difficult ones. When life is uncertain, when someone you care about is standing at their lowest point, that is when love becomes more than a feeling. That is when love becomes a decision to remain, a decision to say, even if this moment is hard, I'm not going anywhere. I once believed we would make that decision together, and maybe in another life, another version of our story, we would have. But life doesn't move through imagined possibilities. It moves through reality. And the reality I faced was learning how to continue walking forward without the person I once believed would always walk beside me. At first, that realization felt unbearable. But slowly, something inside me began to grow stronger, not colder, not bitter, just stronger. Because when someone leaves you during your hardest moment, you learn something important about your own heart. You learn that your strength was never dependent on their presence. You learn that your ability to survive pain was always inside you. You learn that even broken hearts still know how to beat. There were mornings when I woke up and realized the world still held beauty. Sunlight through the window, the quiet sound of the wind outside, the feeling that life still had chapters waiting to be written. And I began to understand that even though your absence left a scar, it also revealed something about who I was becoming. Someone who could survive loss, someone who could face silence, someone who could continue loving the world even after love had walked away. But still, even with all that strength growing quietly inside me, there are moments when your memory returns. Moments when I remember the warmth of the person you once were in my life. Moments when I remember how deeply I believed in us. And in those moments, the same gentle question appears again, not as loudly as before, not with the same pain, but still with the quiet honesty of a heart that once loved without hesitation. My love, why did you leave when I needed you most?